Well, hi, this is uh, a conversation with Margaret Byrne, and we're here at the 23rd Spokane International Film Festival. We don't say annual anymore because we had to cancel out last year for because of a little something called COVID-19. But among our full schedule this year, one of the documentaries that I was most excited about, especially before seeing it for various reasons, but after seeing it, I was really pleased that it lived up to every one of my expectations, and that is the documentary by Margaret Byrne. And Margaret, could you tell us, well, just introduce the film for us, just briefly?
Sure. So the film is it's a documentary called Any Given Day. It follows three people that I meet in a mental health court over a period of years after they graduate the program and kind of for years within their life. And then you also see myself in the story.
Mm-hmm. And I want to get around to asking you several questions, but I first want to make a comment that I think that over the years, I've seen personally many movies about drug addiction, about mental illness, and the correlation between the two, sometimes not. But I've never seen a documentary that documents so well the ongoing and enduring problem with the situation. You know, people get better and then they get worse, and then they get better and then they get worse. And in so many of these movies, there's a conclusion. Someone dies or someone gets better, someone becomes a role model, and wow, I survived that. But this, it after a while, it was just like, oh my God, this is something that so many people struggle with. The people who have the illnesses, the people who have the problems with drug addiction, but also their extended families. And I think that you do a really marvelous job capturing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So would you tell us just basically, I've read a couple of interviews that you've done, but so I know you're practiced at this. Tell us how this project began and what drew you to it in the first place.
Yeah, so I started thinking about making this film back in 2014, and there was just a lot of news about Cook County Jail being the largest single site mental health facility in the country. And I knew I wanted to make a film about people that were struggling with mental illness. And I knew I was interested in making a film about, the relationship of mental health treatment and the criminal justice system. How do those two things come together, and how does that even work? And so I started filming at Cook County Jail in 2015. And I actually was on a path to make a different film. You know, I was working with different people. That film, kind of became really challenging. It felt like there was no solutions when people got out of jail after getting treatment. They went downhill. And that's what led me to go observe the mental health court program, because I thought, well, this is interesting. So they're bringing people out of jail to give them treatment in the community. And so I spent 8 months observing that court. And over those 8 months, I found Angela, Daniel, and Demeter by observing court. And so that's where we all met. And, the film then, we go on and film for, I guess, the next 4 years. So you see them graduate the program, but it's not so much that they just get through the program. It's what happens after this program. Are they going to find success in getting treatment in their communities? What is it, and number one, they're, I always first, they're people. And this is the story of three people that I met and ultimately became friends with, because in order to really tell a story like this, I think you have to care about the people first.
Right, right. And I mean, you make no bones about this in your film. You were having your own problems also.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I think that, that's why I wanted to make the film in the first place.
mhm,
And I didn't think that my story had, I think like many people that I film, it's hard to see that our story has value or is important. I just thought, well, this isn't about me, but it's something that I understand deeply,
mhm, mhm,
But then I realized that in order to tell an honest story, I needed to be open about that, even though
right,
it's something that was uncomfortable.
right.
And I think, I realized that that's what I was asking them to do.
Mhm,
So even just as a filmmaker, this has been a really good exercise for me to be in the film, to be vulnerable, to be out with them and talking about this film and
mhm,
talking about, what this is like and being open about it.
right. Was that something that helped uh, your relationship with the three people?
Yeah, I mean, I think all throughout, what helped was just having honest conversations from the beginning. So it's
Mhm,
certainly nothing that I hid from them. It just wasn't, I I didn't know I was going to be in the film, until later on.
mhm.
Um, and but yeah, we have talked about it since the film has come out, and I think they really appreciate seeing that story in juxtaposition to theirs.
Mhm. And how did you manage to get such good access in the jail and in that in court? I mean, that's not easy usually, but you got a lot of really good access.
I mean, for me, I take my time. I treat people well. I value relationships first. Um, I am a Chicagoan. I, am born here and I care about, my community and my city. And so, just building relationships. So, filming in the jail actually wasn't so difficult. The sheriff is really open to having cameras inside.
That's
It yeah, it became more difficult when lawyers got involved, and then, it was harder to find people to follow, that didn't have conflicts with their attorneys.
right.
Um, and then in the mental health court, we actually got permission from the Illinois Supreme Court in order to film the specialty court. We had to go through and get permission for each of the cases.
Mhm.
Um, and we also sat down with the mental health court team and talked through each of the cases that we were thinking of following to make sure that, we were having a full discussion whether or not this would be healthy for them.
Mhm.
And in some cases it wasn't. So there were stories that we stayed away from.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there are several instances in each of their lives in which it is difficult, um, because they keep what's the term, recidivism, they keep falling off, especially Demeter. He I mean, I felt sympathy for all three of them, but he seemed like the one who was going to be most in trouble because he seemed to have a propensity toward violence, and his mood swings were so great. I kept hoping, oh man, I hope something really bad doesn't happen. And you communicate that in the film, your own concerns about each of them.
Yeah, and I think also in Demeter's story you see that with Gina, his mom, you know,
Hmm. Yes.
and my intention hopefully was that you would feel sort of, what it feels like for somebody that has to take care of someone who's not stable
Hmm.
and who's an adult, and you're managing their care but you're not.
Right.
They put them on new medications, you don't know what it's going to do.
Mhm.
They don't call you when they let them out of the hospital. So
Right.
um, it's a tricky thing to navigate.
Right. Right. How as a documentary filmmaker in a particular situation like this, how do you ensure that you're not exploiting these people, but that you are telling the truth? I mean, that's got to be a tricky thing for any filmmaker. But I'm not saying you did exploit them, because I don't think you did. I think that you told their story frankly and truthfully. But how do you ensure? How do you keep that truth without falling over that edge of shock TV exploitation?
Well, I think it's a lot about intention. It's something that concerns me. It's something I think about every day. Um, it's something, that I think permission is always a moving, living thing. So just because, for example, just because Angela signed that piece of paper and gave me permission to make a film about her, doesn't mean that she can't change her mind. And so you see in the film that she has apprehensions when we're filming in court, and then she later quits the film in the middle of the film. And I was actually getting ready to, I really wanted to find another female story in the film. And I was like, well, I'd been filming with her at that point for years, but I was ready to just, figure it out, because the people have to come first.
Right.
But at the same time, it's your responsibility as a documentary filmmaker to find that balance and to tell an authentic, truthful story without putting the stuff in there that doesn't need to be there.
Right.
And I think as a director coming from a space of lived experience, where I know what it feels like to feel vulnerable and feel uncomfortable with some of the things in the movie, for me it was different, because I get the final cut say at the end, right? But what I could offer to them, and what we always talked about what we were going to film. We decided on it together. And in the end, they all saw the movie first before anybody else saw it. And even after the movie was finished and they'd all approved it, there were some conversations that came up afterwards. And I was always very open to having those, because I think for me as a filmmaker, the people have to come first. Sure. And that means the people that you're working with, the people that you're filming, and then also the people that you want to see the movie. So all of those things is like, it's finding that balance.
What was the situation in which you showed the film to all the people who were in the film? Did you show it to them individually? Was there a group screening, or?
Yeah, we did. We ended up having 2 screenings because everybody couldn't make it. And I also, we discussed that as an option, as, do you want to watch it on your own? Do you want to watch it with everybody? So we ended up having 2 separate screenings, and coming back and having discussions afterwards too. And actually we hired a therapist for the film, not for any one of us specifically, just to, and she met with all of us just so that everybody could express how they felt, even if they didn't want to express it to me. So they felt like they had a space to talk about it.
Well, I could go on talking to Margaret all night long. I have a jillion questions, but I wanted to make sure I see that there are other people here. If anyone else wants to ask a question of Margaret, feel free to do so right now. Or not, because I can go on forever.
I did have a question, Dan. Thank you for asking. So Pete Porter, director of SpIFF 2022. Margaret, there were so many great moments in this film. The moments with the families, the moments with the support systems that these folks have in place, they were really, really moving. And I loved, sometimes you got really honest moments out of the family members. Like one that sticks in my mind is when, I forget his name now, but his sister is like, look, he's just staring off into space. And you just had this great interaction. It feels, because I'm from the Midwest, and Chicago is like the biggest city that was closest to me, that I felt, closest to growing up. I listened to WLS all the time. So could you talk about this in terms of its place? Because it feels like a very Midwest, but also a very Chicago. There's like a very Chicago piece that I wanted to make sure that I wanted to invite you to talk about, because it feels like a very specific, in some ways, a very specific Chicago place, or a very Chicago-based film. Could you speak to that a little bit in terms of the characters that we meet, but also kind of some of the contextual backgrounds for those characters, and maybe somebody who's not from Chicago or from the Midwest might not understand at all?
Sure, yeah. So everybody is a Chicago resident. The court itself actually is in Skokie. It's in the northern suburb, which, just makes it that much more difficult to get there when you have to go there, so many times over the course of that probation. But Angela is from the west side of Chicago. She grew up, in Chicago on the south and west side. Daniel's from the south side of Chicago, and he actually is living in the suburb of Evanston when you meet him at Albany Care, and then he moves to Cicero, which is just on the edge of outside the city when he gets his apartment. And then Demeter and Gina live on the north side, and immigrated here from Bulgaria. There's a large Eastern European population in Chicago. And really, I think their three stories really represent the people you'll see coming into the court system for various reasons. So I felt like that was one of my priorities, is like finding stories that are representative of the city, but the people that are, being incarcerated because of crimes like this, and finding themselves in these programs, for better or worse,
So I've only been to Chicago a couple of times, so I think that was a good question by Pete, because much of that was lost on me. I wanted to know more about you as a filmmaker. I know that you first went to community college, and then you got your degree there at the University of Illinois in Chicago, correct?
Yeah.
Your degree was in what?
In film.
In film. Okay. And so what drew you to film, and then what drew you to documentary filmmaking? Because you've had, besides another couple of movies, you've had pieces on PBS, POV, and it seems like that is what your passion is. So I guess why?
Yeah, I think from a very young age, I was connected to finding stories and images, and finding a way for that to be an outlet and a way to communicate through pictures. And so it started, I think when I was 11, I got a little plastic point and shoot film camera, started filming my own family. And then I started studying film because I felt like it was so much more challenging, but I really came from it from a visual standpoint, how to communicate through images. And then I think the storytelling piece came later for me as I, was out working in the world. And I've been, working on documentary projects for 20 years now. The first film I worked on was called American Promise. And that's about two African-American boys growing up in Brooklyn, follows their education from kindergarten all the way to when they graduate high school. So that really, taught that experience, and working with them taught me so much about longitudinal filmmaking, that when I moved back to Chicago, this was 10 years ago, I was already, making a film called Raising Bertie, which was followed boys at an alternative program in the South that was shut down suddenly. Again, another film that, you know, I was set out to make one film and, you know, ended up making an entirely different film, which I think happens quite often. Yeah, it was really, you know, living in Chicago, I was able to really focus on my filmmaking more, and started teaching. Whereas when I was living in New York, I was doing a lot more commercial work, working in the music industry, mainly working with Mary J. Blige, doing a lot of touring. And, you know, for me, the challenge has been, well, how do you make movies? I'm a single parent, you know, I am, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, working as a adjunct professor, you know, and a freelance camera person.
Right.
So you know, it's really just about juggling all those things. And, you know, any given day I was able to make it because it was about my neighbors, essentially. So, you know, the scene where Angela gets her son back, that was shot after I picked up my daughter from school. She's in the car with us. Angela calls, she says, will you come with me? Because I don't want to do this myself.
Right.
I came and picked her up, and you know, and it's just how life happens, you know. And then I shot that scene in between picking up my daughter and going home to make dinner. But if it were, you know, if it were like a 16-hour shoot day, you know, and I just couldn't make films like that at this space in my life when I'm raising a kid. So that's also been something that I've, you know, figured out, is how do you make movies, raise a kid, and balance all of that so that you are still present, you know, for what I feel is my most important job, you know, at this time.
Right.
So, and that's what I, you know, I really hope to teach other young people, that you can do multiple things. But it doesn't have to be that you're making a movie every 2 years or every 3 years. It's not, it doesn't matter, you know.
All right. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think Angela, who is signed on, wants to ask a question. Are you unmuted, Angela?
I think I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the film. And I wanted to ask you, in what ways do you think you've redefined success? You were kind of going down that road with your last answer. And another question is, what is the price you think that society pays for looking away from mental illness and criminalizing people who struggle with this illness?
Those are great questions. I think, you know, I say it in the movie, I think success is about the little things, you know, finding little things, connecting with something as simple as me finding them in this mental health court, and us connecting. You know, we all know each other, and we all stay connected, and there's something valuable in that. And something as small as me getting lunch with Daniel every month, it changes my life, and I think it changes all of our lives in some small way. And I think at its core, documentary and filmmaking is about connecting and figuring out, how do we connect when we've been so disconnected. And I think essentially looking away from those things that are uncomfortable is, it's sort of the human condition in a way, is we want to be comfortable, we want to be in our houses and be around people that agree with us, and that's what's on our social media. And then so I think we have to get uncomfortable, and we have to I mean, we have to know we have to be aware and conscious of what's happening. And I think if we build borders and walls, then it's easy for us not to see each other, even though we only live in the city of Chicago. few blocks away, but we don't go over there, you know? So, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm hoping, that the work that I continue to do will help build upon those ideas.
Did that answer your question, Angela?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Did you want to follow up with anything else?
No, I mean, I think she really did get to the human struggle, and I appreciate that, and the fact that it did humanize people and individuals for us, and that's an important thing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as I was saying at the very beginning, it did so in a way that felt real, because, you know, there's no magical cure for many people. My wife certainly wanted me to share with you that my brother, I had to bring him up here in 2003 because he's several years younger than I was. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he had ongoing mental problems ever since he manifested them in his mid-20s. He was 69 when he died. And for the last, 17 years, he lived here in Spokane. And even though he did not have an alcohol or drug problem, I mean, but he did go off his meds at least 3 times in the 17 years he was here. And he had ended up in psych triage and, just going off the deep end. And if he had not had his family here, my wife and myself, to take care of him and to make sure that he got the help he needed, I don't know what would have happened to him, because he had no one. The rest of our family was dead. So, and not everyone is quite that fortunate.
Yeah, I think it's a reoccurring truth in the film that you see, is that if you have the support, it makes all the difference. Demeter having Gina, me having, my sister and my family, Daniel having his sister, and then seeing that Angela didn't have that support, it made everything feel so impossible. Yeah. So if it's not a family member, then who are those people,
Right. Well, that goes back to what you were talking about creating borders and putting up walls, because, we see these people, and I've seen them more and more, homeless people on the streets since the recession of 2008. It's just gotten, you can't come to a stop sign without seeing people standing there with a sign. And not all these people have mental illnesses, but many of them do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
The support, the community support, just isn't there for them.
Yeah.
Not enough.
I think another theme you see in the film is that housing, having stable housing is key. And, although the movie doesn't get into the business of all of this and the finances of it, to keep a person in an apartment is a lot more sustainable than having somebody in and out of the emergency room, having somebody in and out of jail, and then having to reintegrate, and so I think those supportive measures go a long way, having a safety net for people that need it, I think is really important.
Well, how are all 3 of them doing now?
Well, I'm very excited. Angela is finally getting her own apartment this month. And she's actually getting custody back of Anthony, which is great. And it's been a long time coming, a lot of delays because of the pandemic. Daniel is doing well. He's still in his apartment and getting services at Association House. Demeter has moved to Bulgaria and is living with his dad and his grandpa. And we're actually planning to meet in Prague. Him and his dad are coming, and I'm going to meet them there to go to a film festival for any given day. So
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think an interesting character in that it was Demeter's brother, who,
Oh, Han.
yeah, who basically just kind of backed out of the movie. It's like he didn't want to have anything to do with his brother. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, I think it gets to be too much, you know.
Yeah, oh yeah, I
And
know.
even my sister said it to me in that scene at the dining room table where she says, you know, it was like a month of this. And, you know, finally, when they did put me in the hospital, she just broke down because she was like, this is too much.
Right.
So I lost my train of thought there.
No, that's okay. It's, yeah, we were just talking about Demeter's brother and how it is difficult as someone who had a sibling who had troubles with mental illness. It after a while, it's like, you know, how much can I give? Can I give anymore? You
Yeah.
know?
And what can I do anyway?
Right, right. Yeah. So how's your daughter doing?
If I could interrupt, Dan, if I could intervene. Angela, I don't know if you want to go before I do, because you raised your hand like at the same moment that I started to speak.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was just
I'll
going
wait.
to ask if, well, thank you. I was just going to ask if there was any plans for a follow-up, and maybe even, you know, from those perspectives that are being discussed, not just the ones that are actually living with the mental illness, but those that are actually trying to support those who are dealing with that. Have you thought of that?
I haven't thought of making a follow-up. I'm actually, for the last few years, I've been working on a series about dozens of men that were alleged they were wrongfully convicted by a Chicago homicide detective. And so that has been keeping me very busy. I'm actually at one of their homes right now because I'm going to film after this Q&A, because his story is going to be on WGN, which is very exciting. But yeah, I don't have plans for a follow-up. I think I'm really just looking forward to getting to spend time with them and not film for a while. I think in some ways this film, you know, like every film, it takes a piece of you, and yeah, I can't see doing a follow-up.
Yeah. Could you? I wanted to try to pick your brain about longitudinal filmmaking in terms of, it's not, I don't know. I mean, there are probably people who are documentarians and like, oh, I want to make a film like Hoop Dreams, or I want to make a film like Any Given Day. And then you're like, well, this film took me 8 years to make. And then they're like, well, maybe I don't want to do that. So could you speak to that a little bit about, and of course, Hoop Dreams is the great Chicago longitudinal study. That's like, you know, I don't know if you'd say the mecca of films for that, but it's right up there.
Yeah,
So
from
yeah,
Cartoon, yeah, who has made many fabulous films. Yes.
yeah. So what are the challenges of working in this kind of form, and how do you manage them? I suppose you really have to make peace with yourself and say, this is not something that I'm going to put to bed in 6 months.
I look at it like a lifestyle, and it is my life. It's like it becomes a part of my life that it is in the everyday. So I'm thinking about it every day. Sometimes I'm filming a lot. Sometimes I'm talking about it a lot, but it's always a piece of what I'm doing. And those people are always in my thoughts. And so, and I think you know, I'm doing many other things too. So you're multitasking, you know, you're running your business, you're doing your bookkeeping, you're doing marketing, you know, when you're doing outreach on one film, you're shooting another. I mean, I started this series now 4 years ago. And when I started this series, I was still making Any Given Day. I was still shooting it. And having completed that film, having it, you know, it's going to have a broadcast in June, and having some success with it, and being able to now be in a different place where we can be engaging with people. It's like now I have more energy to put into the series. And I don't look at it as how quickly can I get this done. I more look at it as this is something that I'm now committed to doing. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I believe in it. And you may be the only person that believes in it, but I'll tell you, the other people that believe in it with me are the people that I'm filming. And that means, I think that means everything to me.
Thank you for that. That's terrific.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you've touched on this, but maybe you could be a little more specific, because one of the things I talked to you before we went on camera was how someone makes a living doing this, because, you know, you can film for 8 years and never really know whether you're going to have a movie. You're pointed, you're hoping, but you can't. I mean, you can apply for grants, I guess, and you can do this, but teach adjunct but you're always juggling 2 or 3 or 4 things at once just to try to get through the day, right? To pay your rent.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it also, in some ways, is tied to, you know, I struggle with depression for most of my life now. And the one thing that will get me out, that I won't, you know, back out of, is going to film. And as a kid, it was the one thing I could do is be in the dark room and, you know, and take pictures. And it's that thing that is my, you know, it's so important to me. It's such an important piece of my life that I don't look at it as the final product. I don't look at it as when the film comes out, I've made the, you know, I've achieved this thing, or, you know, it's really the whole process of it. And in that sense, once any given day is done, what would I do if I didn't have this other thing that I was entrenched in? Yeah. And so I think it's just become how I live in a way, is telling stories and taking my time with it. And to me, it's a gift, because you can do that as an independent. You can't do that if you have to answer to a commercial interest. You just can't. It's not possible. And so you get to do what is not possible for anyone else that's getting a paycheck. And to me, if you're doing the good work that is pushing things forward in the right direction, the money will follow. It'll come.
Boy, that's as close to the zen of filmmaking as I've ever heard.
That's how I think about it, though. And, you know, Letitia Dickerson, who's the producer on the film and the impact director, that's always how we talk about it. We dream the dreams, we write it down, and then we believe in it. Because who else is going to?
Right, right. Pete, you have any more questions? Angela?
That's just terrific. I might, I don't know, I might try to rope you into talking to my documentary students at some point, but
yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, that'd be terrific. Because again, just the idea of like rolling with these people for so long, and like just the idea of being, you're getting into some really interesting territory in terms of like a participant. I mean, you're not creating a wall between yourself and the subjects. And I think that that's just such an exciting place, but it also a really, I don't know, I don't want to say dangerous place, but it's just such a place where you really do have to keep doing exactly what you said. Like, it's really about the people first. Like, I'm not scooping into this neighborhood and filming you and getting out and taking your story and making a living off of it. I'm making films that we're all part of. And I don't, it's just like a different philosophy than a lot of filmmakers have. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that because it was so vulnerable. It was so open and honest,
Mhm.
and you know, it just made you feel and look at things in a whole new way. So I think you know, your method of operation there of believing in it and saying, hey, if this is good, the money will follow. I mean, that comes through because these are people and they're real to us at the end of the day, right? And they came to life.
Pete, how much longer do we have? Because I have more questions. I could go on all night long, but I don't want to. You're muted. You're muted, buddy.
Sorry, we do have another Zoom set up to start at 7, so and we should let Margaret get on with her filming. I suspect she's given very generously of her time.
Absolutely. So if we don't have any more questions, then let's let you go. Margaret, thank you so much for allowing us to screen your film and then for being available for this. It was truly a pleasure talking to you, almost as much pleasure as it was to watch the movie.
Thank you. This was great. This was great.
So do we just say goodbye?
Best of luck. Yeah, best of luck on your next project. That sounds really great too.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.